This is In the Name of Football. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the In the Name of Football podcast. I don't really want to be doing it, but we are. We're here. We're back. Obviously, it's the In the Name of Football podcast derby this weekend, Manchester United versus Arsenal. So we are going to be having a massive chat about that, really, because we actually watched the game together and it created a lot more talking points. If I should imagine if we watched it separately. But yeah, so we're obviously going to be digging straight into that. We'll obviously be looking at the weekend's football results and having a look at them before we go into the international break already this season, the first international break of the season. As always, I am joined by the co-host Ash, who is obviously buzzing after the result today. So how are we doing?
Yeah, well, I'm glad that I'm coming on and recording after a beautiful victory, to be fair. Especially the way in which you celebrated the Garnacho goal. That the noise that came out of your mouth gave a real ring to my ear. So to see that ruled out was pretty bliss.
Yeah, so that's the end of this week's episode. No, to be fair, I mean, we're going to get stuck into that anyway. But I think that offside decision was so bad. Like, it's just, let's get into it. Why not? There's only one place to start, isn't it? We did say watching the game, like, I think we said, didn't we? If it was a draw, you couldn't complain if it was a draw either side. I think a draw was the best result for both sides.
I think it would have been fair. A fair result would have been a draw.
Yeah, sorry.
Have we clarified, by the way? We are talking about Arsenal versus Manchester United.
Yeah, it is Man United Arsenal. Yeah. So obviously Manchester United losing their game 3-1 to Arsenal. But yeah, like when we were actually discussing it and we were watching the game together, and we said like a draw would be a fair result. But I think and you did agree at the time, whether you've changed that opinion now, but I think in terms of executing a game plan, Manchester United, if they had won that game, would have come away and you couldn't actually complain because you knew that Manchester United were going to sit back, hold possession with the ball, let Arsenal come at them, which they did. And that game plan was executed perfectly in the first half, near enough, I would say, because I think you saw that what we were trying to do in the first half, we were going a bit too long ball. Whereas what we're trying to do is obviously draw your players onto us and then play through the middle of the pitch, which we didn't. We weren't actually doing anything with that possession. And I think in the second half, you saw United try to play through the lines a lot more. And rather than going long, hitting the balls long to Rashford, etc., because it wasn't working. So we obviously had that style of that change of style of play, which was a lot better. But yeah, it was annoying more than anything. Out of all the results that we had last year when we was at 1 point out of 27 possible away from home last year against the top 9, which happened 2-0 against Spurs. We were winning the game 2-0 at half time versus Spurs. That's where the draw came from. That one was the most disappointing in terms of result, game plan, and like you say, how I celebrated the Garnacho goal, because let's face it, I mean, you're looking at it, you just thought that's a goal. And we watched it multiple times back afterwards. And that's a very poor decision. And I think in general, with offsides, when they take that long, or not take that long, when they're that close, like you could sit there and I think you said it very well after the game. And Gary Neville questioned Mike Dean several times about the angles. And he was like, oh, yeah, they saw both angles. It's like, well, why did they go with that one then? And literally Mike Dean just shut him down like,
he just sort of he just sort of discarded what Gary was saying about the angle. He just sort of quickly was like, "Oh, well, that's the decision. That's right." And if you listen back, that is how it says. Mike Dean doesn't directly address that point on the angle. He just says, "No, that's the right decision." And it's like You haven't
Yeah.
explained it there. All you've done is give the explanation before that. And to me, you see them given either way, don't you? You've seen them given offside, and you've seen them given onside. And when I saw that, I thought he's level. For me, he's probably level. And I think, to be honest, overall, we've come away rather luckily to win that. A bit more on the game itself, and as you were touching on, I think that was the game plan, and what Ten Hag was expecting was us to perhaps press quite hard from the front line, and then that's why you were going long ball. You'd play out from the back, draw us in, playing out, starting all with Onana, who particularly in the first half was almost playing as a quarterback, wasn't he? And then
I'd love to see the stats for that first half. I swear he must have had the most touches on the pitch.
Oh, it was just most of it was in, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably what the game plan was. Ten Hag was probably hoping that we'd commit players forward in a bid to try and break your press, and that's why you were hitting the long ball. And because we weren't doing that, we weren't being overly aggressive in the press. We were quite standoff. We were keeping our structure, and I think that sort of nullified the game a lot. Because as I said as well to you whilst we were watching it, there wasn't that many chances. It was a game of sort of spurts of action, wasn't there? There was little flurries in large parts. It was quite a good tactical battle, really. But then again, you look at it from an Arsenal point of view, and I think perhaps we were quite wise not to commit too much, because we know how good Onana is out from the back. And when you have players like Eriksen in there as well and Fernandes, there's always an opportunity where you could get hit on the counter, which we ended up doing. Side, it would have been a goal. Really interesting game, and overall, as we said, I think a point would be fair, and I think we were quite lucky to sort of win that game. I think, as again I said to you, it wasn't like an Arsenal home game against Manchester United of the past. Over the last 5 years, I'd say, by and large, we've been the better team. You might have got a few goals here and there on the counter, but we've been having a lot of chances. How many games has David De Gea had at the Emirates where he's had to pull off I don't know how many saves?
Yeah.
And same again last year. Like, okay, we only won 3-2. Okay, we only won with a late Eddie Nketiah goal. But overall, you'd say Arsenal were by far the better side, and we created a lot more chances. It was a lot more difficult today, and I think Ten Hag was right in general, as in saying, I think United played well, and I think that by and large they executed the game plan. You get a draw there, you arguably should have snuck the win. And, if that Garnacho goal stands, which could have quite easily have done, you've walked away there from 2-1. Everyone's praising Manchester United and saying how well they've gone to the Emirates and got the win.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we mentioned during the game, and you talked about Onana there, I think it's the first time today you actually saw one of the main reasons why we bought Onana, because like the one of the main reasons why Arsenal didn't press so high up the pitch is because I think they were well aware that Manchester United now have the ability to actually play from the back with the goalkeeper, and it creates a new threat, doesn't it? So like, you were more standoffish, where it's usually you do win the ball higher up the pitch, but you that's what I'm saying. The game plan was near enough to a T, and that was so disappointing. I didn't sit there on the edge of my seat like, oh, we're going to concede in a minute. It wasn't like that,
No.
Like I said to you, if that game ended a draw, I thought Diego Dallo was probably the man of the match for me. He was absolutely sublime. You complained during the game that Saka wasn't going at a player as much as he was last season, and I don't know if you meant that just in general or just that game, you did actually mean it in general. But in that game, I don't know if it's just Dalot just played really well to nullify that threat. But yeah, it's just like, I thought tactically United were spot on today, and that is the most annoying thing about it. I think talking about the game, I think we're moaning about the offside, but obviously I think it was a brilliant decision from the referee not to award the Havertz penalty after all. That was one instance where VAR has actually worked. We had a very open and proper debate about it here, didn't we? And then eventually you're like, oh yeah, I can see now he didn't actually touch him, and it's just straight away me and you were both like, that's a pen.
I mean, as soon as it happened in real time, we as you quite rightly said, we were both like, that's a pen, and it did look like it. And as you see, he goes through, and when Wan-Bissaka sticks his leg out, the contact isn't made. The contact is only made when Havertz ends up running into him, and by that point, as you quite rightly said, Wan-Bissaka's tucked his legs back in.
Yeah,
but then the only other point is that
yeah,
and you said he's still impeded his path. He's still Havertz
well, they
has
both
gone
have.
through. He's running through, and he's impeded his path. So you could say that, but it's very, very soft, and you don't really want to see penalties given for that.
No, and I did. There was a couple of things I said. I do actually just said that we did play a very good tactical game today, and I thought, if anyone got the game plan right, it was United. And I know it sounds really weird talking about them losing 3-1 and actually having the better game plan, but I do
Weren't a
believe
3-1
they
game.
did. Yeah, I do believe they did have the better game plan. What I would say though is that there was a lot of time that Manchester United gave Arsenal far too much space on the edge of the area. A lot of times they get cutbacks. I think there was the Martinelli chance. I think obviously the Odegaard goal where we picked up that Eriksen lost his man completely, just ball watched, didn't he? So there was a few chances there, but yeah, obviously I think Rashford's goal was superb, and I think I said it, didn't I? As soon as he shifted onto his right and Ben White let him take that second touch, that was a goal. It was just. He just given far too much time. And you know what Rashford's like. If you let him do it once and then you let him have that second touch and he's got that look, he's going to score. Obviously, Arsenal instant reply, which I think is what they needed. United need to sit in for the next 5-10 minutes and, play some decent football, which unfortunately they didn't. And then obviously, the Declan Rice goal at the end, me and you are still probably debating this one, but I think Onana probably should have done better for that. I know you said that he looked like he was set on his left. Yes, he was, but also it's straight at him near enough. It did take a couple of deflections, but
a few other people have said that as well. But I understand the viewpoint, because yes, he has got a hand to it. So you're thinking, well, if he's got a hand to it, then surely it should be strong enough to keep it out. But the thing is, the trajectory of Rice's shot was the other direction as to where the ball went, because when you watch it quickly, the deflection doesn't look, it's not that big. But when it's slowed down, there is quite a big deflection, and not as in it's a massive one, but by how it changes the angle of the ball. And that's why I'm saying that Onana has shifted his weight to his left, because that's where the ball was heading originally.
Do you know what? I'm actually, as we're actually talking about it, I'm watching it. And I'm actually watching. I've got the Sky Sport highlights on still. It's like going in the background, and that shot is actually on the floor. It's proper flicked up off. Actually, I didn't actually notice it.
That's what I'm saying.
It's actually straight along the floor, and that was going nowhere.
It's completely changed the whole trajectory of it, and because he shifted his weight to the left. Okay, yes, he may have got a hand to it on his right, but it's always going to be that much weaker because he's put all of his weight on that other side. So it's always going to be harder. So that's what I'm saying for me.
You've also got to think about it, which I've just saw it. I've seen it because it's took them 2 deflections. You got a lot of spin on the ball at you. So if it didn't take the spin, it probably would have just hit him and probably bounced down and gone out. But it's actually spun. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, they've got the second and obviously the third goal. You did say it. That was great composure and a great finish. But I did say a top striker should be doing that anyway. I know you kind of take it for granted, and I would have been fucking pissed if that was my striker going through and he didn't finish that in the end.
Yeah.
You're going to sell the fullback. If you're any sort of a player and you're worth your soul playing in the Premier League, you sell your fullback, you put it in the bottom corner, and that's what he did. And that was so yeah. But for me, it's just the whole, if Garnacho was a yard offside, or I'd be a lot
when
more
it's that close.
Chill. Do you know what I mean? But it's also one of the things, isn't it? And I think this is where there's it's either offside or it isn't. It's just well, when you've got to sit there and I know they didn't actually debate it for that long, actually live, but they did debate it for quite a bit after the game, and they were debating. And we saw an angle, didn't we, where the one where Gary Neville done his nut with Mike Dean.
When it was
level. The thing I think the biggest thing I took away from that was that the ref, obviously the linesman's not allowed to put his flag up anyway, but then he didn't put his flag up afterwards either, did he? At the end of the move, which is what that's when he should. And also, Ten Hag was bang in line, wasn't he? And we both saw it.
You said, good point that you said.
Ten Hag was looking across the line. He was a fullback, and he saw it, and that's why he was so perplexed. And it's just like it was the wrong angle. And I said to you, and I think this is something which the Premier League should look at. There's a couple of things which I think they should look at. The Serie A model, which I think is the only one about, which is where they look like it's almost as if you put your hand in jelly, where it makes like a mold imprint on the rest of the pitch, where you can see which one's the furthest. And that's a brilliant model. But also the in this day and age, especially with like how you have like what's it called, infrared and stuff like that, like that should be you should have like almost parallel cameras down the pitch where they should be able to straight across the pitch, and you get your angle, and that is
spot on.
That's, you can't fault it then. But yeah, it's for me, it's just that's the hardest thing. I think United had a great game plan. We've lost them 2 goals. Lost the 2 goals at the end, and it's just so narrow. It's so narrow.
You've got to take positives from it, though, haven't you?
Big time.
You think, as we've said, how poorly you've done away from home. You said, 1 point out of a possible 27. That's shocking against. I think it's the top 9, isn't it? Away from home, and that's poor.
Well,
but when you're putting in but when you're putting in performances like that, surely the results will eventually come. Because, as I said, that Garnacho could have gone in easily. That could have been ruled on, and you've come away from that with 3 points. And I wouldn't even grumble. I'd say perhaps a draw is more of a fair result, but I wouldn't grumble because I'll quickly look at it from more of an Arsenal point of view, and I don't think we were that great again today. I think. No. In general, I think we looked a bit more stable with the sort of old back 4, which we're now able to use because Zinchenko's back. I think I said it to you early on. It's important to see White linking up with Saka down that right-hand side, and then Odegaard, to those 3 and the combinations they play. Maybe Ben White didn't do it enough. We were cautious by the pace of Rashford and getting caught, but when Ben White is able to bomb on and overlap, that's where we're effective, and you get all those 3 coming on. But again, this just feels like there's a little bit of something missing. That little bit of spark and flair going forward isn't quite there. We're not as direct. We're not as cutting edge as we were last season. I think as you mentioned about Saka, and I think it is sort of this. Yes, don't get me wrong. He scored a great goal against Forest, I think it was, wasn't it? But he's just not seeing quite himself. He's not taking on his man as much. He's not trying to beat him. He's not being as direct. And I'm not too sure with that. Things haven't quite worked out for Martinelli yet. So it's a little bit of a concern. I mean, happy we've got 10 points from 4. Realistically, we should have had 4 wins from 4. With that Fulham game, we should have won. But it's we've got the win, and that's a huge result, really, in the grand scheme of things. You've got to be beating your rivals like that at home if you want to become a team to win the Premier League. You've got to be getting those wins. But yeah, there does need to be an improvement in performance. So overall, I'd say, because it's not quite working, and maybe it will click eventually, but it's not quite there at the minute.
Well, I will just say, I'll cover it from where you first took over there. There are definitely some positives there with obviously the way we performed today. You could see they looked more of a team today. Manchester United, they looked like the back 4 knew what they were doing. They looked like the midfield 4 or 3, whatever how they wanted to play at the time, or 5, however it was in defensive mid and attacking phases of the game. And obviously, like you said last week, Rasmus Højlund come on, and I thought he did add an extra dimension to the game for United. There were several touches where we put like Rashford and Bruno through, and obviously a fantastic touch for the I think it was Casemiro's pass through to Garnacho for the goal, which was offside. So yeah, and he really did. I think he ran more today in that 30-minute cameo than Martial has done in 8 years at being at Manchester United. So, that's an absolutely fantastic going forward for there. But with Arsenal, I think I've just listened to you, and I think, well, surely that's a positive, right? You've got 11 points, 10 points from 12 from your first 12 games, and you're not happy with the performance of your team. That's good. Sign of champions didn't commentator saw you the other day in the second game of the season, the prick. But, no, like, yeah, it's one of the things, mate. You know, you've got to look at that. You know, you Martinelli's not firing yet. Saka's not firing yet. Your attacking emphasis isn't as good as what it is last season.
And United, you've played well, and we've still won the game 3-1. Not a fair reflection, but it's a telling sign, isn't it? You know that it's, you know, this can't be anything positive, because the hope is we're going to have to get better than hit at this point.
You know, like, you look at United's start to the season, look at it this other way, you know, and you could have been coming on this tonight and thinking to yourself, United win that game 2-1. Garnacho, I still think that probably would have ended up 2-2, because I think, you know, injury time nowadays. But you could have been sitting here tonight with 9 points, or no, 7. Yeah, it would be 7 points, and you'd be like, we're just being beaten by a Manchester United team who have been below par all season.
Yeah,
you know, but in actual fact, like, Martinelli hasn't performed well today. He's done all right. Saka's done all right. You know, whether that was Wan-Bissaka and Dalot playing well, who knows? But you're complaining about your team not being on this, you know, this, how can you say it? They're not in the groove yet. Well, that's only good. I mean, how many times have Man City started the season off poorly or not to a Man City standard, and then just gone on a 12-game unbeaten run at the end of the season?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we'll have to see. I'm not going to grumble. You know, we're still unbeaten after 4. You know, it's just those little things which hopefully we can improve on. And yeah, I think the hope is you know, the front 3 will be as effective as they were. But you know, we'll have to see. You know, there was changes as well, that, you know, those slight changes as I was talking about last week with the defense, and those slight combinations, you know, with now that Zinchenko's back and he can then push into midfield, and Ben White's overlapping. Hopefully that will get us back into how we were last year.
I think that was one of my biggest things from last week. Sorry, I said, oh, great, you've just got your team back to, like, Zinchenko's coming back and, like, Thomas Partey's injured. You're like, oh, for God's sake, now Arteta isn't going to persist with playing Partey at right back. And you're like, so you basically near enough had the same team as last year, plus a Declan Rice and Havertz, realistically, wasn't it? You know, but anyway, you know, like, it's kind of weird that, you know, like, last week we beat Nottingham Forest, and I wasn't looking forward to going to my next visit to Old Trafford. I just thought the club looked in a bit of disarray. But actually, bizarrely, coming back off a 3-1 loss today to you guys, I'm actually looking forward to going to that Palace game when I go towards the end of the month now, because I can see, like, I think Amrabat coming into that midfield, Højlund, how he looked today, you know, just certain little things today. I was like, oh, it's actually, you know, like, you can see it. Bit weird though, finishing with Maguire and Evans at centre half, which is a bit.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. Actually, I was thinking, if we don't actually win this game and they're ending the match with Maguire Evans at centre back, that's not good. That is not good.
It is. I mean, I don't. One thing, you know, we'll just quickly cover this before we go into the next game. Obviously, I think a lot of people were criticising, who I know, criticising Manchester United's transfer window. Now, I was just looking at that. I think the only thing I would say is that the only signing I would actually question would be Mount, and the only other one I would question as to why it wasn't done early was Amrabat. They're the only two I've really got a problem with. I mean, like, people were complaining that we signed Sergio Reguilon. Now, what do you want us to do? You know, like, it's not like we need to go and replace Luke Shaw and Malacia. Now, if you personally think we need to replace Luke Shaw, then fair enough, be angry at the Reguilon signing. But it's not like we've sold Shaw or Malacia, is it? You know, we're just looking for cover. You know, that was a bit bizarre, like, why people were complaining about that. Like,
how long is Shaw out for?
A couple of months. So
he's brought him in just for extra bodies through the door. They're like having that extra cover, as you quite rightly said, and a loan deal for a player who's already played in the Premier League. Like, you can't. I don't really see the issue with it.
It's not like we're signing Ryan Bertrand, like I thought last week. You know, that would have been a catastrophe. You sign someone who's, I think he's played for Spain. You know, he's played for Sevilla at a top level, played in the Champions League, Europa League. It's not like we're signing the tin pot player here, is it? You know, like, I think his debut for Spurs was against Manchester United, and he was absolutely superb. You know, so I'm not Cucurella was mentioned. I think that there would have been two players who would perfectly come in and just cover it. And again, it's only a loan till December when we have a break off if we want to break off in December. Sorry.
Then. It's
So
just cover for sure, isn't it?
Yeah, it's covered for sure and Malacia because but it's another thing, like with this whole Evans and Maguire plan, people are like, "Oh, I can't believe we've ended up with them on the pitch." Yeah, but how often do a team lose their 3 centre halves? It's not only have we lost our 3 centre halves, you've also lost a player who would actually fill in at centre half last season. Sure. So it's not like, it's not like we've only done it because we've had to. So actually, the actual transfer window, I'm not actually disappointed with it in this. I don't even think the only one I would question was Mason Mount. I think it's a bit of a weird one. I'm still not convinced on that. Whether he was playing, you might now see something different. Maybe he was playing Mount there because he didn't have the Amrabat player in there, and Bruno now might be moved to the right, or who knows? We'll see after the international break. But yeah, I was questioned on it today, and I just thought I'd give my opinion on the whole Manchester United transfer window. I can't really complain. I think they've got 4 very good players in there. Højlund looks like a very good buy today. Like you rightly said, Lincoln play up already, wasn't he?
It's going to be so different. Yeah, exactly. As in, this is what I've been saying. It's going to be so different when you've actually got a proper striker in there, and as quite rightly as you say, like Højlund's in there. Even in just that brief half-hour cameo, he looked decent, all things considering. Driving into the box as well, which Ten Hag was adamant was a penalty. We both agreed that it wasn't. But yeah, no, Højlund, he's gonna be good, and it'll work. It will work for United. It definitely will. The only thing is now, obviously, those injuries. Martinez, the hope for you will be that he's not out for long. Obviously, he went off. We don't know what's going to be with him. If Varane, how long's Varane out?
I didn't say. I think it was. I think they said roughly about 6 weeks. But I think obviously you got the international break, so we would have had a week out already. Then 2 weeks for the international break. I think they said he only misses 2 games after the international break.
So yeah, just the hope is obviously Martinez, and then because if you happen to roll with sort of Lindelof and Maguire for large parts, that is probably where you're going to struggle, isn't it?
Yeah, that could be an issue, but I think Martinez will be all right. It's probably just precaution because obviously that looked like the same ankle as what he done last season. So it's probably one of the things where you'd rather not take that risk and get him off the pitch because the players know, don't they? I know we don't want to keep going on about Manchester United, but we are going to have to cover this quickly. Obviously, Sancho was left out of the squad today. Ten Hag was asked during the press conference after the game as to why he was left out, and it was mentioned that he apparently didn't insert himself well in training this week, which has then provoked a statement from Sancho on social media to say that he didn't. That he don't question his commitment to Manchester United, and he'd always give his all for the club, etc. There's been no issues, he's saying. But reading between the lines, I know that Manchester United and Ten Hag obviously supported Sancho last year when he was obviously going through his personal issues. But also looking back, I have done a little bit of research on this. This isn't the first time that Sancho's had issues with training. Borussia Dortmund, he was had some issues there. And there's one here that Sancho reveals he's late for Borussia Dortmund training due to a sleeping problem. There's just loads of stuff. Gareth Southgate, I remember during the World Cup that people questioned his playing time, and if you remember, it was because he wasn't focused, and he was left out of the squads and not playing because he wasn't performing in training. So he's got a history of this. So it's something where I think I said to you during the game, which is bizarre, that this could be the next generation of players that Manchester United will struggle to get off the books. But we're seeing with Fred, McTominay, Maguire, etc. Potentially Sancho, Casemiro, and Varane when they need to get rid of these players. I would dread to think what Sancho's on at Manchester United, and it's probably one of them contracts again where Woodward's been throwing the money around, and we look like we're screwed. So, I don't really know what's.
It sounds like he's got a lot of mental health issues himself, and he struggles to deal with that. which is a shame because on his day he's a brilliant player. It really is. But if it's not sort of working and he's not working out, and it really hasn't worked out with United, then maybe a move is best. But yeah, it does sound like he has got quite a few mental health problems himself.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? I really don't know. I mean, the only thing I would say is that Ten Hag, and rightly so, like if you've got players, I remember a game last year where Garnacho didn't really track back for a game. I think it might have been Leicester at home, and he hooked him. I think we got caught on the break several times, and Garnacho was just not tracking back, so he took him off at half time. I think it's like he wants that team to be together. And if these players, and I think unfortunately for players, if Ten Hag don't like you, you ain't got a prayer. You're done. And I think we're seeing that with Ronaldo, De Gea, Maguire, because he only is playing because they've got to.
He ain't got no choice.
Yeah, well, it was mentioned that Pavard would have been there if Maguire had gone to West Ham. Pavard would have been there this week. That would have been Pavard coming on for Pavard probably would have started today. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's a problem which isn't going to go away very quickly. Anyway, look, I think as a game as a whole, and I'm actually Arsenal have won the game. It was the hardest one to take for me out of all of these defeats we've had against the top teams away, because of just how I thought that was the first time I've actually executed a really good game plan, and you could actually see that. Yeah, that was the hardest thing for me today, and obviously the Garnacho, but from pluses from you as well, you're complaining about you're not performing very well at the minute, and your attacking players aren't playing well. Well, what happens when they do click?
We'll have to see, won't we? But yeah, half hour on that game. I think it's time we move on to the rest of the results, isn't it?
Yeah, Luton starting at the weekend. They opened up the weekend's fixtures with the first game at Kenilworth Road, the first Premier League game at Kenilworth Road. If you didn't know, Luton only just managed. They got relegated the year before the Premier League started. So yeah, that was their first game in the Premier League, losing at Kenilworth Road, and losing 2-1. An absolute baller of a pass for Lucas Paqueta for the first goal to Jared Bowen. It was unreal.
Quality, isn't he?
Yeah, he's such a good player. Do you know what I mean?
We were saying about how he was our little Football Manager player for years before he was sort of, maybe just at Milan, maybe just before Milan, and loved him. And I think he's had that sort of extra bit of quality in the middle of the midfield, haven't you? I think that's why West Ham have started so well, and the likes of Ward-Prowse and Paqueta are gonna. They're the players you need who are going to create from deep, and as we said, West Ham are going to be dangerous from set pieces. Obviously, with Ward-Prowse, a goal again from Zuma there. Bowen as well on the score sheet. Bowen has made a fantastic start to the season, so positive for West Ham. They're probably going to have another good year, I reckon.
Yeah, and James Ward-Prowse, it still baffles me how that bloke hasn't gone to a team in the top 7 of the Premier League. Like, no disrespect to West Ham, especially when. Again, I know we've just covered Manchester United. I would rather have got James Ward-Prowse for £30 million than Mason Mount for 50. 100%. He's such a threat from set plays. He carries the ball well, and he can pass the ball. He's such a good player. I was disappointed that he went there. I thought as a player we should have been all over. But yeah, kudos to West Ham. They played really well, didn't they? They're great. It's a good win there. Tough place to go, really. First game of the season for West Ham, for Luton at home. So wanting to get off to a good start, but they're just not good enough, are they? Unfortunately, I know they've had a few good additions in Tahid Chong, and Ross Barkley, bizarrely, is there as well. And I think they've got Tenjin Menji from Manchester United as well. Oh, that's a centre back we could have used. But yeah, so there's a few players there who have gone out of the door. They've got in, and maybe that might be enough, but I can't see it. I still think Luton will set that lowest ever points tally, unfortunately.
Maybe not the points tally, but I don't think they ain't going to stay up.
No, and so we're moving on to another team who might struggle to stay up. Chelsea losing at home to Forest. I don't mean Forest struggling to stay up. I don't mean Forest style. No, I'm joking. We'll look at the Forest, because Nottingham Forest got some absolute ballers. Did we actually check that Origi signed or not? Because I thought there was a rumor that he was going there.
You did say,
Now,
I haven't
thought
seen
he
it.
did. You quickly have a little look, and I'll just run through it quickly because I know you can hear what we're talking about. But
Yeah, he did join on loan. Yeah,
he did. Yeah, I thought he
Yeah.
did because I think he was rumored to go somewhere else, and that he eventually went to Forest. But I was listening to Talk Sport yesterday after the game, and they were saying Forest could end up playing Forest, and Forest could have Arioni as a striker, a Langer on the left, and Callum Hudson-Odoi on the right. That's brilliant. That's actually a tidy little forward line, isn't it?
Gibbs White being in behind, playing
Yeah.
Gibbs White at 10. Yeah, they've got some good players, and they're gonna score goals. They're gonna score goals. We've seen that all season, their ability to get goals. Emirates, Old Trafford, Stamford Bridge, obviously beating Sheffield United. The only thing is that obviously they're susceptible to conceding. But defensive performances at Stamford Bridge, who obviously, Chelsea, not the finished product yet, but still, I think we saw when we were looking back at the game, just how many bodies they were getting back and blocking shots. Chelsea were creating, they were putting some balls into the box, just couldn't finish. But the amount of, blocks they were making, the amount of men they were getting back, if they can defend a bit more solidly, they're going to pick up points. And I think Forest are going to be fine. We praised Steve Cooper a lot. They've dug in and stayed up, and I think they're gonna do well, and Forest are looking like a very solid team.
Yeah, and a lovely finish from Anthony Elanga as well. And just a quick reminder that Manchester United sold a Swedish international with 15 caps at the age of 21 years old for £15 million. I don't know if I got the caps right there, but it's an international player at the age of 21. And, so I'm not saying he's a world beater, but you never know. Probably didn't miss training as much as certain players, but there you go. So that was a great win for Forest. Really good win there. Obviously, Chelsea not the finished article, and I don't think some people feel saying that Chelsea are going to get in top four. You deluded.
No, they're not getting top four.
No. But so let's move on. Sheffield United starting this Saturday games for us with a 2-2 draw. Some lovely finishes there, weren't there? I mean, like Cameron Archer, very unlucky not to get a couple of goals, really. His shot obviously come back off the post for an own goal from Jordan Pickford. But the first goal was well taken from him as well. But I think probably the moment of that game was at the very last kick of the game. That save from Jordan Pickford was unreal.
Well, it's like a double save, really, because obviously the first one where he's hit onto the bar and then he's had to get the other one as well. But again, these two teams, I think they're probably two of the weaker teams in the division. The fact that Sheffield United have let Everton somehow score 2 goals. I don't know about that because Everton, they're not very good going forward. I think Beto is a good signing for him, and that might give him a little bit of something. We all know how important it is for Dominic Calvert-Lewin to play. But yeah, with Beto up top, they might have a little bit of something. Obviously, Decore getting on the score sheet, and I think you said as well, whether you said this on a podcast or just to me, but Dan Newmer looks like to be one of a bit more of the creative players. He obviously got a goal as well today. So, again, I'm two of the weaker teams, but I think, I went for a draw and a prediction for that, and I was right. So, probably two that are going to struggle. I think Everton will probably continue to be floating in and around that bottom 3.
Yeah, I think Everton, like we said, it's a tough one because although Everton, I think, will struggle, and they've had some really poor performances, like considering they lost to Fulham and Wolves at home, teams are going to be down there and around them. I still think Wolves will slide into that. I think their problems are only going to get worse because it's a bit of a weird one as well because both of these teams, I think, are only struggling really because of financial fair play. Because Everton have even openly expressed that they can't.
But
spent.
Everton has spent millions of pounds over the last
Mm,
5 or 10 years on absolute dross. So, I mean, yes, you can blame financial fair play, but they've only got themselves to blame there.
oh
They've
yeah.
forked out tons of money
But what?
on just
But what I'm
nothing,
saying
on
is,
nothing.
but what I'm saying is the ability for both them teams to strengthen the squads this season. They're now paying for reckless spending or not being in control of what they're doing and mismanagement of the clubs. Really, do you know what I mean? So it's probably their own faults as why
That's
they're
working
there.
then,
Yeah,
isn't it? It's working.
yeah,
You can say what
yeah,
you like about financial fair play, but in that instance, I guess it is worked.
yeah. Of course, but yeah, I just think that Everton are just lucky that these teams, like I think Wolves, I just don't think Wolves. It's going to be Wolves or Everton, isn't it? It's going to be one of the things that them two are probably the worst of the worst, apart
With
from Luton
Luton
and
and
Sheffield
Sheffield
United.
United, yeah.
Yeah. But we'll move on to that one. Next, we will look at the Brentford Bournemouth game. Yeah, I mean, not really too much to say about that. To be fair with you, we were both watching that together, like so just looking at the covering the games, weren't we? Felt really sorry for Frank Aneka chasing back for the second Bournemouth goal, absolutely doing his job, covering, and then just absolutely slack back passing to
Was
let
it
Bournemouth.
Onyeka or was it Henry? For some reason, I thought it was Henry. Either way, who it was yeah. The just absolutely busting a gut to get back, and then yeah, but just stick out of play, mate. Just chuck it, stick out of play, and you've avoided
Yeah,
it altogether.
yeah,
But no, again, Brentford, Bournemouth, I think two quite fairly similar sides, especially for this season. I think they're both going to be, very attacking, but susceptible to conceding quite a lot of goals as well. But I mean, how good is Mbuemo? What an unbelievable start to the season he has made.
yeah,
4 goals in 4 games. Trying to fill that void from the loss of Ivan Toney. Obviously, Visa has done a solid job as well at the minute. So yeah, I think they'll probably be all right. Brentford are Brentford. They've just got a good formula. They've got that good foundation of scouting, and I think they'll probably be fine. For Bournemouth, I quite like Solanke, to be fair. I think he's sort of come on. He's never going to be a player who's going to bag your 15 20 goals in the Premier League, I doubt, but 13 goal contributions in the league last season. He started off with 3 and 4 for this year. I think you even pointed out how good that goal was for Solanke, extremely
yeah,
well taken as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, great to see David Brooks back in amongst the goals after I can't remember exactly what it was, but I believe he did have cancer not too long ago, didn't he?
yeah.
So great to see him back playing and getting goals in the Premier League. But yeah, overall, I think they're two teams that should be absolutely fine for this season. I
Yeah,
know a lot of people said Bournemouth may slip into it, but I think by and large they'll be all right.
yeah, and to be fair with you, the manager seems to be getting them playing some decent football. To be fair with you, I mean, had a narrow loss to Spurs the other week. It wasn't like they got ripped apart. Spurs beat, I think it was like 2-1, 3-1, something like that. But yeah, they weren't exactly bad, were they? In that game. But yeah, I think that they've got enough. Like both end sides, you could easily see them finishing between like 14th and 8th, can't you? Just like roughly round
Yeah.
about that sort of area. Where should we go? I tell you what. Ping Ming Sung, you naughty, dirty little boy.
That finish.
Was absolutely disgusting. Burnley 2, Forest 5. Spurs 5. Sorry, not Forest. Spurs 5. Did I say Spurs or Forest then?
Not too
Burnley,
sure. But there
Burnley
was some
2,
absolutely
Spurs
filthy
5.
goals in that game, though, weren't there? It was
Yeah,
outrageous. Some of the goals.
yeah, yeah.
I'll
I
let
mean,
you. I'll let you start.
but yeah, obviously Burnley taking the early lead, but that Sun goal was just datty, wasn't it? Yeah, like
The
have some of
chip.
that. It was, yeah, I thought he was just going to absolutely blast it, and he's just like, oh, there you go.
I mean, the
You know
ball
what I mean?
from Pedro Porro into Solomon at the start was just pretty outrageous in itself, and then
Yeah,
Son takes it down well, lays it off, gets it back, and then absolutely disgusting chip. over James Trafford. And then we had that Christian Romero goal, who you said as well, that was an absolute banger. Just
Yeah,
absolutely rifle it on the edge of the box, in off the post.
yeah.
But James Maddison, though, obviously got a goal again. But just from those little clips at the start of the game, we saw just those little 1-2s in and around the box, driving in, creating those chances. And I feel like Spurs have lacked that sort of player for such a long time now. Just that player who's going to drive forward from the middle of the park and sort of create and play in between the lines. They haven't. When was the last time they had that quality sort of central attacking midfielder? You know, it's been a long time since that. I'm thinking maybe even as long as Modric. You know, I'm no expert on Tottenham players, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, that's what I'm sort of thinking, and I think that's the big difference. And as we also originally said as well, you know, not relying on Harry Kane looks potentially to make Spurs better. So no, very, very, very positive. Udogie as well. He's had a pretty solid start to his career in the Premier League. 20-year-old left back from Italy. Massive, massive hype from him in Serie A. Has had 2 quality seasons at Udinese. Only 20, and he's already got a couple assists to his name. I think he's going to be a very, very good player. But yes, what do you think about Spurs? You know, obviously, I think we both weren't too hot on them before the beginning of the season, but Postecoglou has made a very good start, and you know, top 4.
The thing with Spurs is, I think we did both say maybe Kane leaving could be a bit of a relief, a bit of it's no longer are Spurs going to keep Harry Kane? How long can they keep Harry Kane for? If they don't get Champions League football, is Harry Kane going to stay? This. Like, well, actually, no. You know, like I think Daniel Levy was actually holding Spurs back there. You know, like that's the criticism I would have. You should have got rid of Kane earlier than that because coming back off the Euros, the performance he had at the Euros for us for England, he was at his prime. They should have when Man City offered that £100 million plus, whatever they were offering, 120 million ridiculous fee, they should have took it. And now you can see that, you know, they've got players who can like rotate, like Son's not stuck out on the left, he's come inside, you know, you've got Kulusevski, he's coming in, you know, and then you've got Maddison added into that, you know, maybe top 5 I think might be the probably the good thing for Spurs, correct me if I'm wrong, no European football. I want to say no European football. So it could be a bit of a blessing in disguise for them. So that could be an outside chance of top 4 because of that. That could be their only saving grace because obviously I think if they had European football to contend with, I don't think the squad depth is there for them to actually cope with that. So maybe that would put them back a bit. But other than that, yeah, you know, like playing some good stuff. So there might be an outside chance of them getting top 4 there.
Yeah, the only thing for me is I think he probably may get found out a little bit more towards the middle of the season. He might have to adapt. But, you know, in general, you know, it's pretty positive for Tottenham. Just quickly on Burnley, though, I think it's definitely not been an easy start for them. You know, Manchester City at home, Villa at home, Tottenham at home, all home games, yes, but very difficult. So I think we've got to take those games with a pinch of salt for the meantime. But the only thing for me is that I think obviously, you know, Company wants to play this sort of good possession, pass and football play, similarly to what he did in the Championship. I think maybe a little bit naive approaching how it has been so far. You know, they've conceded quite a lot of goals. You know, obviously a lot of people said they'll be fine. Maybe could get dragged into it, but I think eventually they'll probably get things clicked. And, you know, as soon as they start playing a few more easier teams, they'll start getting points.
The thing with Burnley for me is that what they don't want to do is it's very easily done, especially like you just said with the opening run of fixtures, is get dragged into that mentality of losing games because as easy as you can get mentality of winning games, you can also have that adverse effect and you go and lose games and it just becomes like a more of an uphill struggle for you, doesn't it? So when you do come across these lesser sides, you're already in a negative start. You're in a negative frame of mind. So that might even and the thing with being naive, you're absolutely spot on with that. And it was a bit of a concern. I think we did raise that, which they could get caught out in. It reminds me very much of when Norwich City absolutely smashed the Championship, played everyone off the park. You know, Obviously, Burnley had that one player in Nathan Teller who was very instrumental in that, and they had him on loan, whereas Norwich had Emi Buendia, who absolutely ripped it up. Coming to the Premier League, they played naive, exactly tried to play the same sort of football. They had probably one or two decent results. I think it was Newcastle and Man City they beat that year. But after that, a lot of teams found them out because of that naivety and Daniel Farke, and rightly so. If you've got a style of football you enjoy, then you want to play it like that. And so I think that could be the only problem is Company not having the players to play the football he wants in that league.
Yeah.
That could be the only sticking point. And so that needs to be shifted on. But yeah, other than that, Spurs, I think massive shape for outside of the Champions, for massive outside chance of the Champions League.
For sure.
Moving on we've got a couple of games to cover from the Saturday. Let's cover one hat trick or potential hat trick. I think it probably will be a hat trick. But Evan Ferguson grabbing a hat trick versus Newcastle United, who haven't had the start of the season that we kind of expected them to have. I think obviously moving on from the disastrous loss last week to Liverpool, that's not the result they wanted to go into a team where Brighton kind of, for me, are a bit unpredictable at the minute. I think you like that unpredictability is there with Brighton because 5-1 at home to Everton last year, beating Manchester United probably the week before, and then obviously they lost to West Ham 3-1. Or 3-0, 3-1, and then they go and lose this. They win this one 3-1 against a team who arguably could have turned up there and rolled them over. So yeah, don't get me wrong, two fantastic strikes. I think from one potential fantastic strike from Evan Ferguson, but what a player! I think if he continues that sort of form, I think you did say earlier. It's like purple patches maybe with him at the minute. But I think there's definitely the raw ability is there with him. He's certainly
He's only 18. He's literally played. I'm looking at it now. He's made 24 Premier League appearances, at 18, and he's already scored 10 goals. You can't really complain. I think his movement in and around the box, he's sort of got that natural striker's instinct, hasn't he? And he's also got the ability to you can play off him too. Obviously, very, very good strike as well by Ferguson. I think they've got a quality player there who they will probably struggle to keep by either January or by the end of the year.
Yeah, the sort of player who, if Manchester United announced that they signed him tomorrow for 60, 70 million, I wouldn't grumble. I wouldn't sniff at it, mate. I'd be like, brilliant, let's go. Do you know what I mean? But the problems for Newcastle there are only, losing 3-1 for me. It's not good, is it? When you've got the ambitions, obviously, of a team like Newcastle, obviously, let's not take it away from Brighton. Some fantastic build-up play in them goals. It wasn't like Newcastle were just diabolical, Brighton obviously put them to the sword.
Yeah.
But if Newcastle want to be in that chance of getting the top four again and progressing on the upward trajectory that they want, this isn't the sort of result they need.
No, I mean, obviously they have had an incredibly difficult start. Villa at home, Man City away, Liverpool, Brighton. That's tough. That is very tough. But you do expect them to send a bit more than 3 points in those games. I think they will be fine. I think they've potentially been a little bit unlucky at times. I think they will in general be all right. Especially when they start picking up a bit of points. I think as soon as they just sort of get back into momentum and rhythm again, that they'll be fine. I think as I said before, they're now switching from that play at the beginning of last season. They were very defensive, getting men behind the ball. They're trying be a bit more open, and that's what happens sometimes when you're trying to play a bit more open. You might create a lot of chances. It doesn't always work out, and then someone will just go bang on one in at the other end. That's just how it can work out sometimes. You look at the Villa game. That wasn't a 5-1 game for Newcastle. Villa were better than the 5-1 said. Sometimes it just works out like that. But I think they'll be fine. But, to be fair, this start to the season has made me think, will they get in that top four? Maybe I'm now starting to favour Liverpool more likely candidates for that top four spot now.
Yeah, let's hope not, eh? But I think Yeah, I think you're right. Newcastle, they have had a tricky start, but what I could easily see happening now is obviously Eddie Howe thinking, do you know what? Maybe we may need to be. He's got 2 weeks where he can probably take stock now and just be like, right, maybe we do need to go back to just making things tighter for ourselves, relying on the break, relying on that pace with Anthony Gordon and Isaac and players like that, and then going like that, like they were at the beginning of last season, and probably just start again, like a reset button, because easier games coming back after the international break, etc. But you did mention them, so we're going to save Man City for the last. I think, we'll probably just whiz through a couple of these games, and we'll leave Man City to last. But Liverpool winning 3-0 today. I think the absolute ball and got strike from Szoboszlai. What a strike. That's all I can say. That was a superb strike from him. He said it clean as a whistle. I think when we saw it, we were both like, that take a deflection? That was just, and then we saw the replay. It was like just a bullet, wasn't it? I don't think you could have, I think if the net weren't that would still be travelling, because he hit it peach, didn't he?
You really did it well. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's quality goal, quality player. Liverpool really made a good start, unbeaten through 4. A few tough games in there, not the easiest. Obviously, we know Villa were good last year. Away at Newcastle, always tough. Away at Chelsea, though they've got their woes, it's never an easy game. They're obviously I said before, the only issue there is that holder midfielder. Obviously, Endo is there now, but not sort of the quality in which they were looking for, clearly, because they wanted Caicedo or Lavia. And then obviously they've got in Ryan Gravenberch, who for me is not sort of your typically Holden midfielder. I think he's again of sort of another ilk of a McAllister or a Szoboszlai, who can sort of play quite all round. Obviously, we'll have to see how that works out. Obviously, they got Bajcetic as well, who obviously played quite well, sort of in a bit more of a Holden role last year. I think, Liverpool will probably be all right, though. I think, obviously they've kept Salah as well, and they've got plenty of attacking threat up top. I really like the move again with Alexander-Arnold playing in that inverted role. You saw in the game against Villa just how good he is. That's going to give him a lot more ability to play those balls forward. There was a quality ball played over the top. I can't remember who it was for, but that was at one point. And he also clipped a ball in for, I can't remember which goal it was. It might have been the second goal, but he clipped the ball in. No, it wasn't. Maybe not even a goal. He clipped the ball in, and maybe even Nunes missed it or something. But his ability on the ball, he's so good, and obviously him moving into that inverted sort of. Moving into midfield from the inverted fullback role is going to be key, and that's why they started performing better last season. Towards that tail end was when Klopp decided to play him in there, and that's when they started playing well. Still a work in progress, but positive signs.
Oh, I really need to bath. I just want to throw up now. So why are we praising these for?
Yeah, we've got to be objective. We've got to be objective on this podcast. You just wish it was last season again when they were shit, but when we brought the podcast back, they weren't shit.
All I want to do now is just listening to you and me praising Szoboszlai's goal and you just gushing over Trent and that. I just want to, just want to hurl. Do you know what I mean? It's horrible, isn't it? It really is horrible. I don't know. Just something happened. How's Vlad and them nukes going? Anyway, right, moving on, because I can't say everyone praise Liverpool anymore. But like you say, right, great start to the season. When you come back, you can lose 4 in a trot. Whatever, bosh, can't be asked. Oh god. Well, hopefully they get their good start to the season. It all starts to go wrong around about the middle of December, and I get a good birthday present, and we win at Anfield. Yeah. Pigs do fly. Let's move on to good old Woy and his team. Good old performance today, beating the Wolves 3-2. Some lovely finishes in this game. Also, Oswin Adward getting a great couple of goals. One a natural striker's finish, coming to that near post. Lovely finish. Bosch, have some. Love that goal, to be fair with you. Ebraiche with an absolutely fantastic, superb touch for his goal, bringing it into his own half. Lovely goal. And again, you know, a lovely little 1-2 from Oswan Edouard for his third, his second and Palace's third. You know, Wolves getting a couple of goals. I don't really think they're in the game much, to be fair with you. But yeah, Palace picking up another win. You know, I think they've got some fantastic players there, and like I think we said last week on the podcast, keeping Ebraiche and Michael Elise is really important to them, especially after losing Zaha, and keeping them out of the clutches of the players of teams above them. Some great work.
I think overall they just got a very, very solid sort of foundation. I think Roy is always going to play a bit more defensively, a bit more in, you know, without that attacking impetus again in your tougher games. You know, I'm thinking to the Arsenal game, they were sort of on the back foot, but then you see their attack finally sort of come to life at home to Wolves and what you expect. You know, they do have quality in there. You know, as you quite rightly said, once Elise comes back as well, that's going to be pretty important. But you know, they've got some good players there. You know, Edouard and Eze. You know, they've got some good attack and quality in there. I think, yeah, again, they'll be fine. Hodgson knows what he's doing. It's just about trying to find that successor for him, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I still want to say that I feel like I still think like Patrick Vieira was hard done by there. I know like Roy Hodgson's come in and he's performed really well for them. And he's got some good wins, but I think it was well documented. And we even brought it up on the podcast at the time when they were due to sack Vieira. They'd played all the tough teams and like not one team above. In the remaining fixtures, they didn't play one team above them. It was all teams below them. So they were destined to do well after that run of results. But yeah, you know, like you say, an absolutely brilliant performance from West Ham, from Palace, sorry, and good old Roy. You know, we'll say 176.
It just feels like they're papering over the cracks, though. Like, yeah, they got Hodgson in, but like how long is he going to be there? Like, they've just sort of waited for the problem to then come back again. They've just delayed the issue, and it's eventually going to come back. Maybe they thought, right, we'll get Roy in for as long as we can, and we'll find a successor. But surely that's what they were doing before. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? We'll save the roundup for the best to last, as far as I'm concerned. I think it's pretty sad state of affairs for the Premier League going forward. But Manchester City 5, Fulham 1. For me, you know, there was a dubious goal in there. The second goal, which I think is clearly interfered with play, and I don't think it really should have been allowed. I think Marco Silva was right to come out and give it some on that one. But you've now got a team who can quite clearly let their manager go away to have a little bit of an operation and still turn over and get 6 points, a 2-1 win and a 5-1 win. And, you know, Haaland scoring a hat-trick. I think I don't want to end up like the other guy who was the meme when he said about Haaland, but he's turning out to be a bit of a player who does love to score the goals and multiple goals against a smaller team. And I know he scored a hat-trick against Man United. But I'm just saying, he just like when they play at home, he seems to he likes to score at home, and he likes to score his hat-tricks come against. If he gets one, he usually does get more. But
I'm pretty sure his goals against Fulham were like his first in 4 home games.
Yeah. He's. But what I'm saying is, I think it's like his first goals of the season were actually like his first in 6, wasn't it? So I mean, like, I can't believe we're actually talking about Haaland like this. But yeah, do you know what I mean? It's a bit of a I don't know. It's just something to keep an eye on there, I suppose. I'm clutching at straws, I suppose. But
you've got to,
yeah,
at this point.
I think when,
but you know, yeah, six goals in 4 games to start the season and an assist. Yeah, I mean, I suppose he could be doing better, couldn't he?
Yeah. The thing is, and you know, I said to you earlier on, like 4 wins from 4. From a side who predominantly seem to not struggle at the start of the season, but they take their time to get their ducks in a row, don't they? And it takes them a little bit of time to get going. And it's usually around about Christmas when they start churning out results and going on unbeaten runs, and they're doing it already. And that's the worrying concern. They've got rid of like 3 or 4 players who could easily like start in Premier League clubs, replace them with 3 or 4 decent players, and it's just easy, isn't it? It's stupid. And I think we're now in a situation where, I wouldn't rule out a 4th title in a row, potentially one at the earliest that's ever been won in the Premier League. I think Arsenal have probably got to start looking at their invincible record as under serious threat, probably potentially this season, or especially under the Pep Guardiola reign. I think it's probably the next one they're going to go for, and I wouldn't even rule out a back-to-back double. A back-to-back treble, should I say? Sorry.
They've had a fairly easy start, though. I mean, Burnley away, Newcastle at home, Sheffield United away, Fulham at home. Like, it's not been the easiest of starts. They've still got some tougher games to come. West Ham away next after the international break. That's not going to be easy the way that West Ham has started. Forest. Still obviously Arsenal, Brighton, United. They've got a run of games of Arsenal, United, Arsenal, Brighton, and United coming up in October. So they've got a lot harder games to go. So let's not go all in quite yet on Man City.
The thing with Man City is in football in general, like I said to you earlier, losing games is a habit. It's just as winning them. And when they start, it's okay to say they've had an easy start to the season. But you could come back off the international break and they're on a 7-game unbeaten run, go into teams like Manchester United, Arsenal, and Brighton, etc. Like you said, that could be like the time that they're on that run. So they're going to continue that run, if that makes sense. It's just going to be like they've got the confidence there. They're on a roll, and confidence breeds confidence. And I can't see in this situation at the minute where you've probably just got teams like a Man City who are just going to. I can't see anyone else challenging. I really can't. It's just they'll have one at the earliest opportunity, and I wouldn't be surprised if a back-to-back treble's on already. I really wouldn't. They've got and you look at the Champions League group as well that they've been drawn. It's fairly like they haven't really got to worry about that. They'll probably qualify from that after about 3 or 4 games. They'll have that sewn up early on, so rest players, etc. It's working out nicely for them already. It's not good, is it?
I'm taking it. I'm not conceding it yet. I'm not conceding it. They've had an easy start. Arsenal in the league.
Oh God!
We'll just beat you 3-1. We're back. 3-1. League title. We'll be champions.
Jesus Christ! You waited until December last year. You've gone in September this year.
What do you mean? I went before the season started.
Jesus, but right. Okay, a couple of things before we round up this week's episode. We've obviously got the fantasy football. I'll let you take that over if you wish.
Yeah, well, I'm not. Oh yeah, I think the points have now adjusted and it's updated the table, so we do know who are week 4. We're on week 4, aren't we? Yeah. Week 4 winner is. And leading the way is Ollie Hall, I believe. Was he? I think he might have even led the way.
He was last
week as well. He's maintained that just about because Matt Jessup, he is flying at the minute as well. He had 94 points this week, one of the highest ones. He's just 5 points behind, but congratulations to Ollie Hall, who has maintained his spot at the top once again. However, for the game week 4 winner in general, and that goes to actually one of our ex co-hosts, and that is Mr. Harry Discombe. He with 111 points. Unfortunately, he started a couple of weeks late, so he's going to have to play some catch up. But a very, very big win for him. He ended up having Haaland, who he captained, and he had Son, and he had Edward, and he had Maddison, and he had Salah, and he had Alexander-Arnold, who had an assist and a clean sheet. So fair play, a very, very good week for Harry Discombe. But yeah, quite a lot of people in there. We're still getting people joining the league somehow. But yeah, it's pretty interesting, pretty competitive, and I think a lot of people are still keeping up with their teams for the meantime. I know we're still only a few weeks in, but yeah, hopefully we can keep going.
Yeah, I'm sitting there in 29th, but I did triple captain Haaland this week and got 92 points, which was I'm pretty happy with that. So
It's very close
yeah,
though. It's all very close, so plenty of movement.
yeah, I got 92 points and I went down. I'm like, what?
You've
Whatever.
gone down. No, you've
I'm-
moved up. You've moved up. You have
I'm-
moved up. It says on here.
okay, fair enough. Yeah, but well done to Ollie, Matt Jessup, and obviously Ben Morris. Do you know Ben Morris? Is that one of
Yeah,
yours?
I work with him, so congrats to
Okay.
Ben Morris. He used his little bench boost this week. So nice effect. He had Archer on the bench for a nice 12 points. I'm sitting inside the top 10 though. Haven't used anything yet. My triple captain, bench boost, none of that. I think I'm probably going to use my wild card for this game week, so we'll have to see.
Excellent stuff. And that leaves us with our player of the week. Where are you going to go with this one?
Tough one to call because I wouldn't really say anyone in particular stood out enough in the Arsenal-Manchester United game. However, the more I think about it, I think it has to go to Evan Ferguson. 18 years old, hat-trick against Newcastle. Very, very well taken goal, I believe, for the second one. So, yeah, for my player of the week is Evan Ferguson.
Oh, decent. My player of the week will be Johnny Evans. No. Right. Yeah, I think I'd have to join you with Evan Ferguson. I mean, 18 years old, Premier League hat-trick. Yeah, what more can you ask from an 18-year-old player?
You got Son in there as well, hat-trick and that chip. So Son's another good candidate too.
Yeah, that was a pretty disgusting goal, and I still can't go over how rank that was. But if the keeper had got up and chinned him, you wouldn't have blamed him, right? Anyway, I think that is all we have time for this week. We won't be here next week. I think we've deserved a little bit of a break. These podcasts are recorded on a Sunday night. International break, obviously, a lot going on there. I think we could probably talk about that. If we decide to do one, we will, but I can't see it really happening, to be fair with you. The couple of things I will say about that is how Maguire and Calvin Phillips are in an England squad when you've got players like James Ward-Prowse not even getting in that squad is just unbelievable. Might as well throw Jadon Sancho in there if we're going to play that game. Do you know what I mean?
I was looking at the team and I was thinking, well, what better options do we have? And are you serious that James Ward-Prowse isn't even in it?
No.
That's outrageous.
Yeah, exactly.
That is outrageous. And
Yeah,
Calvin, I know they're different players, but come on, that's crazy. That's absolutely unbelievable. I mean, hopefully Maguire will end up dropping out once what's his name? Once John Stones gets back fit.
Yeah. I think that's probably why he's in there, really experienced, to be fair. I think that I'd be very surprised if he starts. If he starts, there's something seriously wrong, right? But anyway, look, we didn't really want to be talking about international football. We haven't even covered the we haven't even covered the Champions League groups.
No.
I think what we might potentially look at something to do with the Champions League or something next week. Who knows? We might throw an episode out there. But if we're not, be sure that we will be back after the Premier League restarts, where I believe Manchester United will have a home game. I believe we are at home. I want to say to Brighton.
Yeah, Brighton.
And Arsenal will return against who? This is where you should know who
we have Everton away, so not particularly looking forward to that. Never really enjoy playing at Goodison Park.
Lovely time for Everton to get their first win of the season.
Yeah, that probably will happen.
Anyway, until next time, hopefully we'll get some better angles on offside decisions and Manchester United might actually pick up a win. Who knows? Jadon Sancho might get out of bed and turn up to training. Who knows? A lot of things could happen. Anyway, yeah, until next time, cheers, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Cheers. See ya.
See ya.